This flame is warm as the companionship of friends is warm. Let us celebrate the richness and diversity of life in the presence of God. There are those whose sincerely held faith is that our world is merely material, demonstrably physical, measurable, subject to analysis, ultimately definable. But are there hidden depths in the realm others name as spiritual? Does it have to be one or the other? Could there be the mind-blowing physical integrated with the depth-revealing spiritual? It seems likely that fullness of life, intricately, interdependently, comes only when we pay attention to, explore and value both. Astonishing discoveries, insightful reflection, deepen our understanding, enable wiser ways of living in this wonderful, God-created, Spirit-permeated world. Amen.
A reading from Mark chapter 9, verses 30 to 40. They left that district and began a journey through Galilee. But Jesus did not want anyone to know about it. He was teaching the disciples along these lines. The promised one is going to be delivered into the hands of others and will be put to death. But 3 days later, this one will rise again. Though they failed to understand these words, they were afraid to question him. They returned home to Capernaum. Once they were inside the house, Jesus began to ask them, "What were you discussing on the way home?" At this, they fell silent, for on the way they had been arguing about who among them was the most important. So Jesus sat down and called the 12 over and said, "If any of you wants to be first, you must be the last one of all and at the service of all." Then Jesus brought a little child into their midst and putting his arm around the child said to them, "Whoever welcomes a child such as this, for my sake, welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me, welcomes not me, but the one who sent me." John said to Jesus, "Teacher, we saw someone using your name to expel demons, and we tried to stop it, since this person was not part of our group." Jesus said in reply, "Don't try to stop it. No one who performs a miracle using my name can speak ill of me soon thereafter. Anyone who is not against us is with us."
What an interesting and modern story in Mark chapter 9. A story about relationships. A story about the potential use and abuse of status or power. It reminds me of another story. A well-known CEO of a large multinational company suggested that 2 of his brightest young executives be considered for rapid promotion. They were so creative and so intelligent and so hard-working. They deserved to be rewarded. Everyone knew, including the executives whom the CEO had passed over, that one or other of them would be the next CEO in succession. One, we will call Frida, was appointed general manager of the company. The other, we will call Fred, was appointed deputy CEO. They had been close friends for 20 years and their combined talents and dedication had in part been responsible for the rapid growth of the firm. However, once it became clear to both of them that only one could win the top job, they began to try to undermine each other. Their friendship ended. Their spouses stopped speaking to one another, though they had been friends too. Of course, the other executives enjoyed this power struggle and plotted how they could undermine both Frida and Fred. Now, the big problem was that the two stopped cooperating with one another. And that cooperation had been a key to much of the firm's success. Sales fell off a little at first and then quite dramatically. The shareholders, as you can imagine, didn't like that one bit. So 2 months before the current CEO was to retire, the board of directors intervened and fired him. Then they brought a new CEO in from another company. And everyone said that if only the two had cooperated as they had in the past, both would have won. A colleague of mine reminded me of another story of an incident in the life of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Apparently he was walking one day past a construction site on one of those temporary footpaths, which was the width of only one person. And a white man appeared at the other end of the path. He recognised Tutu and said, "I don't give way to gorillas." At which Desmond Tutu stepped aside, made a deep sweeping gesture and said, "Ah yes, but I do." And can't you see the twinkle in Tutu's eyes as he did that? Wouldn't you love to be able to think as quickly as that? What a way to confront power and arrogance. A blatant racist put-down intended to deny and destroy dignity, being turned back by wit and a non-violent compliance that preserved Tutu's dignity and challenged the claimed power of the oppressor. Mark's story talks of two disciples who are arguing about which of them is the greatest. According to Mark, Jesus doesn't take the prevailing social view. Rather, he takes their probably petty dispute and turns it unexpectedly on its head. He holds up a child, a symbol of vulnerability and powerlessness. And he says, "Whoever welcomes a child such as this for my sake welcomes me." Jesus contrasts the disciples' quest for power with an assertion that only those who accept the powerless and vulnerable will receive God. But let's get real, some may shout. It's a dog-eat-dog world. People are pitted one against the other. The strong survive, the weak perish. Sometimes it is. Most of the time, thankfully, it isn't. But maybe because this debate always seems to be cast in the power versus powerlessness arena, we tend to end up in a no-win situation. What if there's another way of looking at power? There is. And I can only suggest this as to this way of thinking. Several people who work out a way of thinking called process theology have made what I feel are helpful comments, as they talk about unilateral power and relational power. Unilateral power seems to be about seeking to influence others in order to advance one's own purpose. It pits individuals and groups against other individuals and groups. And it implies the gain in power of the one means the loss of power in the other. Fred and Frida were in the arena called unilateral power, and perhaps the two disciples also were in that arena. And it is very disheartening when some church debates operate too out of this arena. Relational power seems to be about having the ability to both absorb and exert an influence, to influence others and to be influenced by others. And it means relationships play a constructive role in the creation of individuals and groups and in their subsequent freedom to be themselves. Mark's Jesus seems to be in the arena called relational power. One of those process theologians, John Cobb, suggests this: the power to expand the freedom of other people is a very different kind of power from the power to overpower other people and compel them or force them to do something that you have pre-decided you want done. Maybe think of it as an orchid or an epiphyte. For an orchid or an epiphyte to survive, it must seek out a host plant. While it gains water and nutrients from the host plant, it does not overpower or destroy this plant. Indeed, it protects it from the risks of nitrate poisoning and contributes to the repair and the flourishing of both plants. Like the orchid, our life, both personal and as a church, is built in relationships with others. The important question for us in the light of Mark's story is, I would suggest, will our relationships be based on unilateral power or relational power?
We light this candle in remembrance and hope, to call to mind Magnus and Ronald and all the saints, and all those dear to us who have gone before, especially those who have died in recent times. And as a sign of hope to future generations as yet unborn, Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life.
A prayer. Our world cries in pain. The sins of previous generations have brought terrible consequences to the world and all who live here. We cannot change what is gone. but we can choose to act now for those who will come after us. Darkness is found wherever love is hidden. May we shine the light of love around the world, in our words, our actions, and our daily choices. In places and people in the world where darkness brings pain and anxiety, in places and people in the world where darkness takes away freedom and free will, may Christ's light shine. In places and people in the world where darkness encourages injustice and violence, in places and people in the world where darkness offers false hope or fake help, may Christ's light shine. In places and people in the world where darkness seeks to steal power to reign, may we be light bearers, shining the light of love into all the dark corners of the world, today and every day. Amen. Go, allowing the light of Christ to guide you and to lead you on the path that leads to life and to love. May you stay safe in the way of Christ, and may you be blessed by His Spirit today and always. Amen.